Good morning, everybody. It's the pollinator and Ray Gibson, otherwise known as Ray Gibson. In honor of losing so many greats, including my father, this video is taking me a while to gather myself together to make this one. Losing parents is especially difficult, and I tell you, losing someone as great as my father was, the legend that he was, is especially tough because I've had to watch, not had to, but on October 2nd of this year, he passed. And I found myself all night watching videos of him playing ball and people talking about him, about what he meant to them, all men. No women, and it kind of appears to me that the Cardinals organization is trying to hide the fact that there's one more left who was there during his heyday, and that's me. Being transgender is probably the reason why nobody in the media has heard about me, and it was about my dad's fame. My dad was the one who made himself great, along with many other people that were involved in hiring him for the St. Louis Cardinal organization and encouraging him, and just my mom holding down the fort while he played ball every year. And it wasn't until until I was nearing the age of 10 that he started, the Cardinals started winning World Series baseball games, and then the whole town would shut down and have a party or parades. There were parades. There's even pictures of me as a child, I'll say, all dressed up and what they thought I was. Everybody thought I was at the time, which was a little girl, sitting in the back of a limo. And the one shot that I saw, I actually remember, because we were throwing styrofoam balls out into the crowd with my dad's name printed on them, or somehow transposed onto these styrofoam balls. And I was throwing them out to the crowd, and they were diving in the street to get these styrofoam balls. And I remember asking my dad, why are they so crazy? Why are fans so crazy? See, being on the inside, I never grew up with that mentality, because he was just my dad to me. I didn't understand how famous he was. So I saw him from a different vantage point, and because I wasn't treated like a boy, I didn't get that kind of information that boys got about someone of his stature, someone of his fame. He was one of the greatest baseball pitchers, black baseball pitchers that ever lived. And he fought a mean battle with cancer. He passed from pancreatic cancer. And I got the call on Wednesday that he was doing hospice in his home. And I was home by Friday. And then it took another week before he left. And that week was the most incredibly difficult week of my life. I realized that all along, my dad didn't know me. I didn't know him. My brother doesn't know me. I don't know my brother. His stepmother doesn't know me, and I don't know her. I mean, there was a total disconnect. When I got there, I quickly realized that not growing up in that home with my brother or my sister put me in a strange situation, and it's not a situation I hadn't been in before. There were stretches of time where I lived there for maybe 1 week, 2 weeks at a time, but that wasn't like being there all the time and getting to know him and getting to talk to him and him talk to me. Neither one of us was real good at having intense phone conversations, and so when I went home, I quickly turned all my attention into trying to just talk to him, to tell him things that I had always wanted to say throughout my life, and especially through my transition. I wasn't there for any other reason. I felt like an outsider there because, everybody was talking about things that I knew nothing about, people that I didn't know. Just a lot of that was going on, and everybody's coping mechanism was different than mine. And I was literally on the phone talking to lots of people that were supporting me through that hospice situation that I was not prepared for, not medically anyway. And so I had a lot of support in trying to get me out of my feelings, get me out of my head to talk with him. So I kept going into the room, his bedroom, and trying to talk to him. And I'm sure he heard me. Here's one thing that happened. When I first showed up, I went in the room alone, and I was just looking at him, and I touched him, and he opened his eyes and he said, "What are you doing here, man?" And I said, I'm here to see about you, Dad. I can't tell you what that meant to me, that somewhere along the line he got it, who I am, who I've always been. I was a son he thought he never had. He did have a son that he knew he had after he retired from Major League Baseball. And they retired his name, his number, and he got in the Hall of Fame. Then my brother came along. But all of my life, he treated me like a girl. So did everybody. And, back in the 60s and the 70s, in the Midwest, no less, there was no support. And I had no conscious awareness of what I was back in the day. I knew I was a boy, but I didn't know how to explain that to anybody. Who would have believed me? They probably would have, excuse me, thought I was nuts, or made fun of me, or I would have gotten in trouble. I mean, who knows what would have happened if I had been more vocal about how I felt when I was young. Nobody could have done anything about it more than they did, which, my dad let me dress up the way that I wanted to when I wasn't in the public eye. So I was splintered into two different ways of being all of my childhood and my teenage years and most of my life. You know, I was a girl in front of the cameras. I was a boy behind the cameras. And living in the public eye made it so that we weren't a communicative family. We didn't talk about things. We didn't get to know each other. Now, I got to know my mom very well after I grew up because the military sent me to the Bay Area where she was living. And we became the best of friends. Now, that's the advantage of being locally present during someone's life, is that you get to know them and they get to know you. You don't have that kind of identity as a child. It's not until you grow up that you know who you are. You begin to discover who you are and are able to communicate beyond, well, to become somewhat friends with your parents. I always knew my place with my mother and my father. They were the parent, I was the child. I would have never crossed the line of thinking that I could disrespect my parents. And so I didn't. But I did chase my father all of my life, trying to get that attention that I wanted from him and didn't know how to ask for it as a boy, not as a girl. It makes me kind of sad that I transitioned so late in life. I was 58 when I started. I had an awareness when I was 54 or 53. Whenever Chaz Bono was on Dancing with the Stars, that's when I became aware and had a word for what I had been experiencing all of my life. So, needless to say, going home for the last time to my hometown. You know, my home was in a different neighborhood, in a different city, in that area. And so going home, I really no longer had a real home. I just had his house to visit. So I went home to his house to see him off, to say goodbye, to tell him how much I loved him. To tell him how much I wished we had had a relationship. I mean, a relationship like the one he had with Wendy and Chris. Now, funny enough, he thought that I had a problem with them. And I never had a problem with them, with my brother and his mother. I had a problem with Dad not reaching out to me to get the kind of bond that I was looking for with him. And so I kept reaching out to him. And when he first got sick, I had ended a seminar at Landmark Worldwide, and I had planned to go home and have an extraordinary conversation with him that was going to break through the barriers that we had with transitioning from him thinking that I had been his daughter all my life when I was his son. And I had planned it, and then right maybe a week or two before I was to leave, he got sick. So when I went home, I did not go home with that in mind because he wasn't lucid enough to have that conversation. No way was I going to jeopardize his health, get him excited, make him think about things that it was hard for him to think about. I wasn't there to cause that breakthrough. And then I came home. I wasn't there for very long, and I came back to where I live and began to work on having that conversation with him while he recovered from cancer. He thought he was going to beat it. My dad, the warrior, the fighter, the legend of a pitcher. He wasn't, for people who don't know anything about baseball, he was an all-round athlete. He wasn't just a pitcher. He could hit, he could run, he could field when he pitched. And I told him when he was going that I was mad at him that the games only lasted like 90 minutes. He pitched so fast that I didn't get enough time to play in the ballpark before we had to go home. And I don't know if I ever complained to him about that out loud. I probably didn't. But I wanted more time to play. And I knew every inch of that ballpark. I was all over that ballpark. My mother practically had to send out a search party at the end of the games to find me, to find out where I was in the ballpark, because I was a very independent child. And, I always wanted to be in the dugout. I wanted to be in the locker room. I didn't understand why I couldn't be in the locker room. In my book, I'll explain why it didn't matter to me of the genitals of those men in the locker room. I didn't care about that. I wanted to be with my dad. I wanted to play catch with him before the games, which is what all the sons of the ball players got to do before baseball games. They'd play catch with their dad, and I wanted to be out there with him. I used to stare at the bat boy and I envied the bat boy, and I wanted so much to wear the Cardinal uniform. Just once, But again, my situation as it was, they didn't know I was a boy, so they wouldn't put me in a Cardinal uniform and let me be a bat boy. Now there are bat girls in baseball games. God, what I would have given to be in that position in the 60s and the 70s. Boy, that would have topped the cake. Instead, I became a very serious athlete. I did everything, except the only sports I didn't like was things like hockey, golf, tennis. Not me playing them anyway. But everything else I did, and I was on the track team, and played all the contact sports, and I took after him. I was just in the wrong body at the wrong time in history, or things would have been a lot different. But I'm not going to try to feel bad about being ahead of my time when I was young. But him passing has just brought up a flood of thoughts and emotions about him and myself. There was something else I was going to say about that. Probably along the lines of things that I was saying to him. And sometimes he had his eyes open and he was looking at the ceiling, because I couldn't have a conversation with him when I went home this time. But I had a heck of a lot of support, and I love and bless each and every one of you that was there for me as all that was happening, because I was out of my element. I was not comfortable in his house. I so very much just wanted my own space, and I ended up doing that anyway. But it's still, I wasn't in my domain. So, being out of town and having all this happen in a place that I wasn't really familiar with anymore made it all the more difficult to handle what was going on there. I did help. Well, you know what? Yeah, I did help. One time I was actually awake and around to see something happen with him where we needed to take care of him. But the rest of the time, my hours were my body was all goofed up because I'm a night owl. And so I would be up late at night and, slept past noon. And that's just my MO. In fact, that's even not my MO. I'm usually asleep all day and I'm up all night. So that got cut back a lot. And I spent a lot of time outside smoking. Yes, I'm a smoker. I know that's, a lot of you'll say, that's terrible, you should stop. And I've gotten it from everybody, including my father, all of my life. He hated that part. At any rate, like I said, it's difficult. This is a difficult time for me. And what made it even crazier is all these other people that are leaving at the same time from Major League Baseball. Lou Brock. The last one was, Lou Brock played for the Cardinals. The other guy, Joe Morgan, also another pitcher, I think for Detroit. It wasn't Sandy Koufax, it was somebody else that my dad actually played against. But what makes it so awkward and lonely is that I'm the only one left. That my mother is gone and my sister is gone, and the three of us were there to see everything go down. We were there. Things were happening around us as they were happening around my father. And I've had some real crazy things happen to me all of my life because of being his firstborn and being his offspring. I've told stories in other videos about things that have happened as a result of being his son. I had a contract in St. Louis once, and that was bizarre because I was, I've told this story before, but I was outside on a cigarette break and talking to this woman, and somehow we got on the topic of our parents, and she told me what her parents did, and I kind of skirted around what mine did. And, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I had my dad, and she said, "Wait a minute, who is your dad?" And I just quickly said, "Bob Gibson," like that. And she went, "Oh my God," and she started crying. And then she wanted to rub my arm. And I thought, oh, gee, here we go again, right? Like somehow fame or something about my father would rub off on me to her. Fan mentality is crazy to me. It just doesn't make any sense. I'll never get it the rest of my life. I understand it to a degree, but things like that happening was just so bizarre and just came out of nowhere that a lot of times I didn't even know how to react. My stepmom gave me this ring, which over there. Okay, she said this was the first ring that the Cardinals gave my dad. But it's too small for him to have worn unless he was wearing it on his pinky finger. It fits on my middle finger, right? I'm a little guy. I'm a little guy, and my dad was a big man. So I don't know where, I don't, yeah, I don't know how this fit him. But I was so very grateful that I had tears in my eyes when she gave it to me. Because I was, my whole life flashed in front of my eyes. His whole career flashed in front of my eyes when she gave me this. All the things that we'd gone through together to survive his celebrity, I'm sure it was quite different after he retired than being there in the middle of the action. So she and my brother got to know him as him, not the baseball player, and I got him and the baseball player, who we didn't talk much as a family. So yeah, I didn't have any stories to tell, any memories of the last 43 years, which is when I left home, and 44 years ago. But I did tell him things of my growing up years. Just talk to him. I got to hold his hand a little bit because he was reaching out to have his hand held. So I grabbed his hand and held it. The whole thing was just incredibly sad and incredibly stressful. And it was hard to see this giant, to see my hero go down. And he didn't go down without a fight, folks. He woke up one night and sat up like he was going to get up out of the bed. And, his wife had a hell of a time finding me. And Chris and his fiance were asleep. So she was trying to get our attention. And when I was downstairs, actually, outside, looking out for raccoons and bugs and all sorts of things down there on the deck. They lived at the edge of a forest in Bellevue. So that's where I was. And when I came upstairs, Chris and his fiance were standing there, and I said, well, how's Dad? What's going on? She said, go back there. Go see for yourself. So I went back to his room. He had a hospital bed in there, and he was sitting up in the bed and trying to gather himself to actually get up. So the four of us, the three of us coaxed him back into the bed because he was in no condition to stand up. And so we got him back in the bed. But he did not go down. He did not go out without a fight. He would, I was told he was fighting the nurses and everything for all other things to be done, like catheters and stuff like that. He didn't want that neither. And he didn't want a big funeral. He didn't have a big funeral. There may be a big ordeal that the Cardinals are going to do sometime in November. I don't know if I'll be able to go because this trip was very expensive for me, and I don't have that kind of money stashed away for a rainy day. This was my rainy day for this year. But so looking at the time, I'm really without words, folks. So I'm struggling to make this video. I'm gonna miss the times that we could have had. And I'm gonna have to somehow make peace with that we didn't get that chance. I didn't live in the same state, so it was going to be very difficult to have that kind of relationship and conversations with him unless we used the phone, which he didn't like using and I didn't like using. I deal with a lot of people, and if I use the phone, guess what? If I use the phone a lot, I will be spending day and night on the phone instead of getting work done too. I need to be able to multitask to do what I do, and not with the phone. I can't do it with the phone and with my computer at the same time. My attention isn't going to be on one thing or on the other. So I talked a lot to my friends about how, and my family about how I looked probably more like my mother, but my personality was just like his, which made us do this all my life, all my adulthood, my teenage years and my adulthood. He wasn't expecting a girl just like him when he had a boy just like him. He didn't realize that until I realized that. Well, until 2016 is when I came out to my family. And I wrote him a special letter coming out to him. Actually, it was an email before I came out to the rest of the world. And I didn't really come out to the rest of the world. I just came out to people on my timeline on Fuckerbook. Then when I got banned, I got yanked away from my family, my support structure, system, and a whole bunch of other people. You know, I got adopted by a bunch of Gibsons in South America. I got cut off from them. I got cut off from my children. Some of them, the only way they communicated with me was on that platform. See, my dad didn't know anything about all that. And I wish I could have shared all that with him. But we just didn't have that kind of relationship, folks. We just didn't. I tried my damnedest, but we were too far away from each other to make that work real well. You know, some people talk to their parents every day, even if they're not living in the same city, and that was not the kind of relationship I had with my dad. And then the misgendering and dead naming. Add that on top of the stress of losing him, and I was doing everything I could to lower my blood pressure, because for every person that thought they were the only ones doing that, several other people were doing it too. So you know, everywhere I go where my family is, there's somebody in the family, somebody somewhere who does that. And it's annoying, it's irritating. It feels like a stun gun every time my family misgenders me or dead names me. They don't realize that. They think they're the only ones, and that I should feel for them instead of for myself when it happens. Nah, I'm not feeling for them. They need to fucking get it, and get with the program and learn something about us. Transgender 101, you don't do that to transgender people. Period. I shouldn't have to explain why. I shouldn't have to explain what it feels like after 5 years of knowing you're one way and they're still referring to you another. I am too old to justify myself to anybody, including family members. Either they get it or they don't, and if they don't, I distance myself from them. I do, it's automatic. I did get to have a very intimate conversation with one of my relatives about this, who didn't realize that I had let go with love. I pushed her away with love because of that. Because when we go out together, that would happen in public. And people that were around would be looking around like, who in the hell is she talking about? That outed me, that embarrassed me. It made me feel just totally invalidated. And I would have to, because I loved her, I didn't get mad at her at the time, but it did make me back up and not be as accessible and available. Now, had she been able to get it together and, refer to me the correct way, we would have spent more time together. She got that, and when she got it and I explained to her what was going on at the time, she began to cry. Because it was like a light bulb went on for her. And I'm glad it did. Not all my family does that. But for the ones that are closer to me than others, it has to happen, or I'm not going to communicate as much with them as they would like me to. And not out of anger, out of self-preservation, including my dad, including his wife, including my brother, including his relatives, on my dad's side. I didn't really know any on his wife's side. There were people and people around, but I didn't know them. So I would just greet them and just listen. I did a lot of listening when I went home, and just talking to him until he passed. So anyway, that's I wanted to say something else about the genital issue, but I have said it before that, that's basically what they don't consciously think that's what it's about, but that's what it's about. And having hair on my face didn't really matter. They look right through that. They don't see this. They don't see a man. They see what their mind remembers. Which makes us feel like they don't see us for who we are, as we are, in real time, in the now, not in the past. I don't live in my past. I live today. They're in the past. So sometimes it takes a long time for people to come out of that past, and sometimes they never do. Some of them never even go there, and some of them come out partially. And it's all things we have to deal with on top of regular stressors in the world. Regular death is regular, but it is hard. Death is part of life, but I've never been good with that. In fact, I was shielded from it in my entire childhood. My parents never took me to a funeral. I never knew who was living or leaving in my childhood. I think I was in my 30s before I ever went to a funeral for the first time, and it wasn't a member of my family. It was a co-worker at my job. And when I was sitting in that church that the services were at for him, it dawned on me, God, wow, this is the first time I have been to a funeral. Guess what the second time was? My mother. That hit me hard. Really, really hard. Because we knew each other. We were friends. We were the best of friends. Vacationed together, went out together, partied together, ate together. We did everything together. So imagine that in contrast to a father that I didn't get to do anything with, hardly. There were some things I got to do during childhood because I chased him all over the country, wanting to be with him, wanting to be next to him, wanting to learn from him. That was my MO. As much as I could, as often as I could, without interfering with school. So to the great Bob Gibson, my father, who I called Daddy until the end, I love you. I'm going to miss you. And I'm really sad that you're not here anymore. It's going to change the trajectory of my story. I no longer have to worry about what he thinks or how he's going to feel about my story being revealed. And maybe the Cardinals will relax about it too and stop trying to hide me. My stepmother saw to it that the obituary was correct, that he was survived by 2 sons, Ray and Chris. Or Chris and Ray. But it's funny because some people that I've known in my childhood, in my teenage years, have contacted the family, who contacted me and told them they sent their condolences, and I connected to them, and their people were saying, "Who's Ray?" And he didn't have 2 sons. Yeah, my old friend Lisa from high school said her mom was tripping because she didn't remember him having no 2 sons. And I just kind of laughed at that. The way she explained it, it was really funny because her mom was hip to all this stuff. She's very aware in the of the LGBT community in my hometown, and it didn't dawn on her that I might be transgender and my name was different, or that I changed my name. But anyway, to my family, I love you very much. I hope you show up when the Cardinals have whatever ordeal they're creating. I think it's too soon to do that because of COVID-19, but they're probably going to go out and do it anyway. They did it for Lou Brock and during this, and they'll probably do it for him anyway, somewhere around his birthday, which was November 9th, 1935. So, everybody have a nice weekend. And I gather myself and get myself back in the saddle to making more positive videos. But I just had to say a farewell to my father, Robert Gibson, and hope we all, his family, gets through this with love and honor and pride of being related to him. I know I am. Peace.